their members on the reservation is critical to make sure that they are doing everything they can within their scope of authority to keep their community safe. And I think that is one of their, as I expressed before when we met with the tribal elders, with the Omaha tribe in Macy, and then on subsequent Zooms with several of the other tribes, many of the tribes came out in support of this. They want the tribal judges to have their EPC orders recognized, to keep their community safer, to keep those sexual predators off the streets and in the appropriate facility, be it a jail facility or a treatment facility. And for those that have a mental health crisis, to get the mental health and behavioral health care that they need.
So a bill like this would not only help those in crisis, but the victims as well.
Senator, you raised a very good point. I'm not sure if it addresses the issues of the victims.
I mean, in reference to removing the people that have caused them to be victims out of the environment.
I guess you're right. You're absolutely right when you say it removes the individual causing harm to another person. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
And thank you very much, Senator Raybould. I appreciate your time on the mic. With that, I would yield any time I have back to the speaker.
Senator Bosselman, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a bigger issue, I think, that we need to deal with this right now. EPC and bed space is the number one issue we have, the lack of it in the state. I've been on the mic before and I've talked about the problems we had with EPC. Just because we have an order doesn't mean that individual is going to be put into a hospital for help. Just because of an order, if that person goes to a hospital, they can refuse the treatment and they can be let out. I've talked before on the mic where one of my probation officers in my district, in fact, the chief probation officer in my district several years ago, had a young lady, a juvenile female, that was suicidal. She was with her in the vehicle for, I think it was 30 some hours. She went to multiple facilities, hospitals, to have them EPC because a probation officer cannot EPC anyone. It has to be a law enforcement officer or judge. She went to multiple facilities and was denied. And the reason part of it was denied when they asked the individual, how are you? Well, I'm fine. I'm not suicidal, I'm fine. Couldn't get her EPC'd, and 30 some hours into this thing, in the van that they were in, she tried to hang herself, and then she got EPC'd. The issue we have in the state on EPCing and finding help for individuals is bed space. The issue we have in the state is to have providers be able to provide that bed space when we do have individuals that need to be EPC'd. Because it's up to that individual in that discussion of whether or not they need that help. And if they say the right words, they won't be EPC'd. Even though the person in this case, the probation officer who knew the individual and knew where she was at and knew she was suicidal, when she went to the hospital, when they took her to the hospital, she told law enforcement, oh no, I'm fine. So this bill will not fix the problem of EPC and the lack of room in our state. I think MOUs could be done to help out, but it's still going to come down to lack of bed space across the state for our mental health, especially in the EPC area, in order to provide those services that are needed. I think that's what we all need to always remember with this and keep in mind. We have a limited number of spaces. We did away with regional facilities a long time ago. This body did. When we did away with the regional facility, we did away with the bed spaces. The challenge we have now is to build that back. The challenge we have now is to provide those facilities so we have enough room for individuals that do need the help, when they need the help, at the time they need the help. Because no matter what, when they take them to the hospital, if they say we're fine, they don't need to be, well, you can't EPC them. So as you continue to listen on this bill, again, The challenge is, to me, we have a lack of facilities to meet the need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Albright, you are welcome to close on your bracket motion.
Okay, I'm just gonna stand and rise so that we can get on with our business. And I'm going to pull this bracket motion. But what I want people to understand is today, they are taking these people somewhere and somebody is getting them there. If they want to make a memorandum of understanding with the hospitals in the state of Nebraska, they can sure do so. If they want to make a memorandum of understanding with the sheriff's department, they can sure do so. But this is a policy issue that does not belong in state statute in the state of Nebraska. Thank you, Mr. President.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Clerk, for an amendment.
Mr. President, Senator Raybold move to amend with AM 3106.
Senator Raybold, you're welcome to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the debate on the floor. I did want to just address something that Senator Busselman said about the facilities. There's no doubt we need more facilities. We need to really fund the regional centers that we do have and the funding that they need for mental health services instead of cutting their budgets. We know the need is real, but when a tribal judge issues an EPC order and they want to take that individual to a hospital in Norfolk that has a bed available, which I understand is a prized commodity, that individual cannot be admitted. That individual is detained and must wait until he gets another EPC order from an appropriate county judge in Madison to be able to be treated in Norfolk. This is the dilemma. This delay is putting your family member, your loved one who's in crisis, instead of getting the treatment, they're most likely held in a jail. That's what the tribal elders said that is so discouraging. They have become accustomed to traveling distances to find a hospital that has a bed available. But then when there is a bed available for treatment and care, they're told you have to get an official EPC order from the county in order for us to admit this patient. I want to thank so much the senators that supported the First Amendment that was introduced that really clarified a lot of the concerns that were outlined by Director Green. Director Green participated in the First Amendment that was written, and that's the one that you approved. We followed it word for word. For AM 3106 makes 3 simple changes to iron out a few issues raised on general file. And I do want to thank Senator Boson for asking all these great questions. She too asked a lot of questions about gun control, and we tried to really clarify that individually with a lot of senators. Concerns about gun purchase laws are regulated by the Gun Control Act and federal law. Persons subject to involuntary custody following a mental health commitment are disqualified from purchasing or possessing a firearm pursuant to law. This is for every EPC issued in our state of Nebraska. This, because it's federal law under the Gun Control Act, this would also apply with the tribal judges' EPC rules. Again, this bill that only a member of a tribe or eligible membership in a tribe qualify. This is not for members or Nebraskans domiciled in Indian country. It does not apply to them. Again, the 3 things that I want to say that 3106 change, it's number 1 regarding discharge. It removes references to discharge upon consent or in consultation with the tribe by striking lines 17 through 23. And it says that the hospital will notify the tribe. not in consultation, but they will notify the tribe of the hospital discharge. Number two, regarding the definition of subject under this bill, again, AM 3106 clarifies that the bill only applies to tribal members by adding who is a member of a tribe or eligible for membership in a tribe on pages 3 and 15 of the bill. Number three, regarding the effective date to allow time for the execution of the necessary standards, forms, and processes, AM 3106 adds an operative date of October 1st, 2024. Both the department and tribes feel this operative date would allow the time needed for them to finalize any memorandum of understandings or any agreements on that. I want to again stress that this amendment, as well as AM 2695 adopted by general file, satisfies all the concerns raised by Director Tony Green with DHHS at the hearing on LB 1288, and I urge you to vote green to adopt AM 3106. And on the verge of being so repetitive, but to make sure we're crystal clear, it allows for recognition of emergency protective custody orders, hold orders, and commitment orders issued by tribal courts under the Nebraska Mental Health Commitment Act and Sex Offender Commitment Act. These are individuals at risk of harm to themselves or others who have gone through an existing process that largely mirrors the process used by county mental health courts. The lack of recognition of these orders is rare and inconsistent. Orders such as civil judgments, child support orders, and others are acknowledged by the state and carried out regularly without concern or objection. It establishes that the tribe is responsible for all costs. Let me say that again. It establishes that the tribe is responsible for all costs for the treatment and transportation of individuals under these courts. Number three, it applies only to members of a tribe subject to orders by a tribal court judge. Here is what the bill does not do. It does not apply to anyone who is not a member or eligible to become a member of a tribe. It does not force a facility to accept a patient. Facilities accept patients as they have the capacity to do so. It does not impose any costs to the county or facility for treatment or for transportation. The tribe is responsible for all costs incurred. This is spelled out 7 times in the bill. Number 4, it does not open floodgates for treatment or transportation. This only applies to a small number of people in need of help who refuse it voluntarily. Most people accept help when it is offered. Anyone who will get up and say this bill isn't needed does not understand what is at risk. Listen to me when I say that we are talking about individuals who are at risk of harm to themselves or others. When someone wants to cause harm, that can come to anyone or in any community. We need to take mental health crisis seriously. I have taken up this issue because I don't see any logical reason why we would want to refuse an individual to be held or transported for treatment when we can protect them from harming themselves or someone else by passing this amendment, AM 3106, and by passing LB 1288. I want to thank you all very much for listening to this debate and for understanding that this is essential to the tribes. This is something that they have urged us to take up. And we hope that you will vote in support of the amendment in LB 1288. Thank you, Mr. President.
See no one in the queue. Senator Raybold, you're welcome to close on AM 3106. Senator Raybold waves close. Question before the body is the adoption of 3106. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There has been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please record.
27 ayes, 3 nays, Mr. President, on the call of the House.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Wishart, Senator Walls, Senator McDonald, please return to the chamber. The House is under call. Senator Kavanaugh, may we proceed? Senator Raybold, the vote was pending. Do you accept call-ins? We are accepting call-ins. Mr. Clerk, please record.
22 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the motion, or excuse me, adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is not adopted.
Mr. President, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to reconsider the vote on the amendment just taken.
I raise the call. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you are recognized to open on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, trying to save people time and not go send the redcoats over to the governor's mansion to drag 3 more people over here, was really kind of hoping that 2 more people would just put their thumbs up so we could proceed. Unfortunately, you're not feeling collegial tonight, so we will continue on this road. And then we will have to do a reconsider of this vote when we have everyone present. So that's what just happened. We could have moved forward, but unfortunately, we weren't feeling collegial. So I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Senator Raybould. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Raybould, 9 minutes, 10 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to start off thanking all the senators that participated in the general file on getting this bill moved forward to select file. I want to thank Senators Day and Decay for, reaching out and hearing the tribe's concerns and working with us on trying to enact legislation that would help address their concern and get recognition for their EPC orders. I want to thank the Nebraska Supreme Court for their input and feedback on how to get the legislation moving forward and the appropriate language to use. I want to thank all the different tribes that have helped craft language and have their legal counsel review the language that we have put in. I want to thank certainly Senator Boson for asking a lot of great questions and helping us make the bill better. I want to say thank you to Senator Albrecht for even challenging me repeatedly on a number of issues, and I hope I fulfilled her concerns and questions with all the right answers so that I can get your support. I know as a new senator, I guess this is my second year, sometimes it's really difficult to predict what issues will be raised on the floor when we take up a bill. And I want to acknowledge the senators that have been great mentors and teachers on this, but asking great questions. And I know that when this bill was advanced from Judiciary Committee, we did not have that amendment quite ready because at that time we were working with Director Green of DHHS to list all their concerns and clear up any misgivings and clarify everything that they raised. We worked with their language. And sometimes because of that amendment process, we don't know where it's going to land or where it's going to land on the debate schedule. But I want to assure everyone that this product was, this amendment, this bill was a product of conversations to address all the concerns raised by Director Green of DHHS, who said a red line amendment. The department was satisfied with the amendment and asked for no further changes. I encourage any of you who have questions to please ask them of me before you vote. I know that some people have raised some concerns. Again, we have addressed in multiple times what the bill will allow and what it doesn't allow. And I don't want to take up any more of your time, but if I have to, I will. But I am concerned that we have these safeguards in place. It doesn't just impact Thurston County. It doesn't just impact other counties where there is an Indian reservation and our tribal members there. It impacts all of us when we have someone who needs care. Without recognizing the tribal judge's EPC, that care is delayed. And oftentimes that individual is either kept in jail or they're released. That's not good for our community and that's not good for our state. This is a modest step forward in doing the right thing for our tribal members. If tribal judges' orders on other matters are recognized, not only in our state of Nebraska, but throughout our entire country, why wouldn't we want this to take place so that we can keep family members, and everyone in our community safer. It has been a challenge to make sure that we convince all of you that this is needed. I was truly surprised when we heard it from the tribal elders that this was their priority and they wanted us to place urgency on this. After multiple conversations with them and Zoom meetings, I understand now how critically important it is. Yes, we have a capacity shortage, but when there is a bed available and that individual presents himself, whether a non-tribal member or a tribal member, we want them to get the care they need to keep them safe and to keep our communities safer. So again, I ask you to reconsider your vote and support this amendment. It addresses Senator Albrecht's concerns multiple times over that we have addressed, or her misinformation on this bill. All federal laws apply, just like they do for any other EPC. All gun control measures apply because they're federal statutes that all the state has to comply with on all the EPCs. This is no different. Indian country language is incorporated in decades of federal laws and statutes, as well as Nebraska law and statutes. This bill has made it abundantly clear it does not impact domiciled members that are not tribe members in Indian country. It does not impact them. It impacts tribal members only. And it's important. Why? Because the tribes are telling us this matters to them. Out of all the issues, they didn't bring up water issues. They brought up this issue. And the tribes agree this is essential to the well-being of their community and to keep our community safe. So again, I ask you to reconsider and support this motion so that we can vote on 3106. Thank you.
Senator Duncan, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, colleagues. I do rise in favor of the motion to reconsider. Obviously still in support of LB 1288 and of the amendment AM 3106. This motion to reconsider is, to put it simply, a legitimate motion to reconsider. There are a number of people that I think were unable to make it into the room before we voted on this, who I do believe would have voted in support of the AM. And so this is simply, I believe, providing time for them to get back over here to ensure that we can actually take a vote on this and attach this amendment. Colleagues, to put it simply, I'm a little bit surprised that we're even having this debate and that we're even having this discussion in such a way. I think it's always important, obviously, to have a policy debate when we disagree about things, and I think it's well within our rights to stand and to say what we do or don't agree with on a bill and how we could potentially make it better or change. But I guess I'm a little bit surprised at the fact that these are things that need to be done. We're hearing from the tribes and the tribal leaders and the experts in this field in order to close certain loopholes and problems, but there's such pushback. And I think Senator Bostelman hit the nail on the head when he talked about the bigger issue here is that our EPC system is a little bit broken and that we could be doing some things to fix that. Senator Brewer, I think, echoed those same sentiments that we currently have an entire system that needs to be reworked. And I completely agree. I've worked in and around that system for years. And I've represented clients who have been EPC'd. So I've seen just how problematic the entire process can be. But that being said, 1288 is a part of that solution. The people who work in this field who understand what they're talking about with regards to the interplay of tribal law and our state courts have identified this essentially loophole where, unlike a number of other kinds of orders that can come from the tribal courts, like custody orders and things such as that, which are recognized by the state of Nebraska, this simply is not. And so what 1288 seeks to remedy is this problem that's been identified by the people who are living and existing in this world, and we're questioning that. We're saying, we don't think you understand this. We don't think you're correct. We don't think you want. I frankly find that somewhat condescending. And I think it's important for us to listen to the tribal leaders and listen to the experts in this field who Senator Rabold's done a great job of meeting with and talking to in an effort to determine what the actual problems are that they're facing that we're trying to fix. So I sort of start with that. With regards to AM 3106, colleagues, if you have issues or troubles with the underlying LB 1288 because you're worried about who this affects, or you're worried about the discharge orders, AM 3106 attempts to fix that. So Senator Raybold listened to the debate and the concerns that were raised on general file, and people had concerns when they read this law. They said, I'm worried that this is going to affect people who are not members of the tribe, or I'm worried that somebody can only be discharged from a facility with the approval of the tribe, which isn't best practices. So colleagues, this amendment changes the language of the bill in order to accommodate and take into consideration those concerns. And so if you were worried about those problems, if you have continued to express concern about the overreach of LB 1288, then you should be in favor of AM 3106, because it is literally an amendment to fix those problems. And if you are wanting to try to make it better, I would recommend, even if you're opposed to 1288 in theory, that an adoption of AM 3106 fixes some of the issues that have been raised on both general file and select file. And so I just want to make that very clear. And I think most of our colleagues understood that, but it's getting late at night, and we've obviously been talking about this for a while, so I think it bears repeating from time to time what the actual amendment does. I would also just thank you, Mr. President. I would also just rise to say that I think in general, this is a very complicated issue. I understand, as we've talked about before, tribal law is very complicated. I'm not an expert in it. I don't know if we have many experts in the interplay of civil and criminal tribal law when it comes to jurisdiction here in the legislature, but there are many people out in the rotunda who do know about this. And in speaking with experts from that area, they've acknowledged yet again that the underlying language of 1288 does not have unnecessary overreach. And so I understand the concerns that were raised. If you share those concerns, please vote green on the motion to reconsider. Please vote green on the amendment, because I do think it addresses the underlying problems that were brought up at both levels of this debate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Day, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be brief because I know we want to get to a vote here. I just want to stress one point that we need to make very, very clear about this. Right now, the status quo, if we do not vote for this bill and we do not advance it and make it law, what is happening right now is emergency protective custody orders are being issued by tribal judges and tribal courts for people who are in a mental health crisis, suicidal, but also for people who are a danger to others. Violent and dangerous sex offenders are being sent back to their communities because they are being turned away from facilities. That is what is happening right now. If you lived next to someone who an EPC was issued on, they took them to the hospital and they said, sorry, we can't help you. And they sent them back to their house. And they subsequently assaulted you or someone in your family. And you found out that was because state senators didn't vote to move this bill forward. How would you feel about that? If you are not voting yes on the amendment and the underlying bill, you are voting to send violent and potentially dangerous sex offenders back into our communities with no help. Let me make that very clear. I would like to yield the rest of my time to Senator Brewer.
Senator Brewer, 3 minutes 10.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we've went back and forth on the bill. I'll just remind folks, I'm voting for the reconsider and for the AM and the bill. But I guess on a lighter note, since we were talking about history in Nebraska today, and we're trying to finish up this last little bit of time before we revote, just so you understand, as far as history is concerned, on this day in 1879, Chief Standing Bearer was arrested in Nebraska after he had trekked from Oklahoma. There's been a few of the senators that told me that, you know, our reservation system is broken. I agree, it is. But understand, we never asked to be put on those reservations, so kind of hard to blame the people that are forced to be on Indian reservations for some of the issues. But if you historically think about where Standing Bear plays now in Nebraska history, 145 years ago, he was arrested just outside of Omaha, put in prison for 3 months before they had his trial. So I'll just share that little bit of history and we'll move on to get a vote here. Thank you, Mr. President.
See no one in the queue. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're welcome to close on your reconsider motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is to reconsider because there were people missing. So if you voted green on AM 3106, I would ask that you vote green on 1306 and then vote green again on 3106. I will note that I was looking over the last votes, the last round of debate, and apparently we gained some people in the body to support this bill, and then we lost 3 people who were in the chamber when we took the vote on AM 3106. And so we just need everyone who voted for it tonight, plus 2 more people, to please vote, and we can move forward with our evening. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question before the body is the motion to reconsider. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please record.
26A, 7 A's to reconsider, Mr. President.
The motion is successful. Senator Raybould, you are welcome to open on your AM 3106. Senator Raybould, waves close, waves open. See no one in the queue. Senator Raybould, you're welcome to close on 3106. Senator Raybould, waves close. Question before the body is the adoption of AM 3106. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please record.
28 A's, 1 nay on the adoption of AM 3106.
AM 3106 is adopted. Mr. Clerk, next amendment.
Mr. President, Senator McKinney would move to amend with AM 3096.
Senator McKinney, you're welcome to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. AM 3096 is amendment for a bill that I introduced, LB 923, which deals with tribal enrollment cards, which was voted out of the Judiciary Committee 8-0. And I brought this bill after talking to members of the tribes about trying to make sure tribal IDs are recognized the same as state IDs. And also because now, due to the changes with the voter ID law, tribal IDs are a allowable ID. And at the hearing, it was a good hearing. I don't believe there was no opposition. And on the Secretary of State website, it says a document issued by a Native American tribe or band recognized by the federal government. So for example, there's the Omaha tribe, Ponca tribe, Santee Sioux, and the Winnebago tribe. I think this is a great bill. I think, especially with the changes in the voter ID law, this is something that's needed. But I think it's something that's needed because we're all on stolen land. And I don't think a bill like this should be needed, but it is a bill that is needed to make sure that we recognize tribal IDs as state IDs. And with that, I ask for your green vote. Again, this was voted out of the Judiciary Committee. There was no opposition at the hearing, and thank you.
Seeing no one in the queue, Senator McKinney, you're welcome to close. Senator McKinney waives close. Question before the body is the adoption of AM 3096. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please record.
35 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
AM 3096 is adopted. Mr. Clerk, for the next amendment.
Mr. President, Senator Blood would move to amend with AM 3114.
Senator Blood, you're welcome to open.
I'd like to withdraw 3114.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, Senator Blood would move to amend with AM 3209.
Senator Blood, you're welcome to open.
Fellow Senators, thank you for the opportunity to bring forward AM 3209, originally LB 911. I thank Senator Raybould and Chair Day for the opportunity to introduce this amendment with her bill. The Indian Child Welfare Act is a 43-year-old federal law protecting the well-being and best interests of Indian children and their families. The ICWA makes sure Native children are connected to their communities and do not lose a sense of their heritage by reaffirming the rights of tribal nations to be involved with child welfare cases in regards to Indian children of their tribe. A priority goal for the ICWA is to keep Indian children within their indigenous communities, as prior to its inception there was enough disturbing evidence to suggest that Native children are being taken away from their tribes without much legal merit. LB 911 gives responsibility to the Department of Health and Human Services and Office of Probation Administration to ensure records are kept on each case, including the Indian Child Welfare Act, and those records are available for analysis. These records will include whether the child involved is considered an Indian child under the federal and Nebraska Indian Child Welfare Act, and which tribes the child represents. Records of testimony for each case will be accessible as well. These records of delineated data will be provided to the Commission on Indian Affairs annually by DHHS and the Office of Probation Administration. We understand DHHS reports on these cases already, but it expands on what they track to get a more important picture of what is happening under the ICWA. I'd like to note that earlier I did pass out a handout from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who recently announced a new rule that is asking all states to do this. So by passing this bill, we are basically codifying what's to come. I did meet with PRO and DHHS over the lunch hour to talk about the language, which is why we have a different amendment. So it's a concept that is to be supplemental legislation to the Indian Child Welfare Act and provide transparency to Nebraska tribes on the what, when, and how of each case involving children of other tribes. Nebraska tribes deserve to be updated on cases involving their children, as their connections to the tribe's culture and families is often at stake. And clearly Nebraska would now be matching the federal trend and be ready when that change happens at the end of this year. With that, I thank you for your time and I ask that you please vote green for Amendment 3209.
See no one in the queue. Senator Blood, you're welcome to close. Senator Blood waives close. Question before the body is the adoption of AM 3209. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There has been a request to place the House under call. Question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please record.
29 ayes, 3 nays, place House under call, Mr. President.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Boston, Senator Brewer, please check in. All unexcused members are now present. Senator Blood, there was a vote open. Will you accept call-ins? We're now accepting call-ins. Mr. Clerk. Record, Mr. Clerk.
23 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
AM 3209 is not successful. Mr. Clerk, any other?
I have nothing further on the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1288 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. LB 1288 advanced for E&R engrossing. Mr. Clerk, for items. I raise the call.
Mr. President, your Committee on Enrollment and Review reports Legislative Bill 262 as correctly engrossed and placed on final reading, as well as LB 607, 834, 839, 867, 894, 906, 1004, 1200, 1204, 1215, 1313. All is correctly engrossed and placed on final reading. Amendments to be printed. Senator Hughes to LB 686. Senator Blood to LB 932. Senator Wayne to LB 1344. Senator Merman to LB 1092. New A bill, Legislative Bill 1402A, introduced by Senator Linehan's bill for enacting appropriations, appropriate funds to aid in the carrying of the privilege. Legislative Bill 1402 and declare an emergency. New LR 9394, introduced by Senator Holcroft, that'll be referred to the Executive Board. LR 395 from Senator Boston. And LR 406, introduced by Senator McDonald. Those will all be referred to the Executive Board. Notice of public hearing for the Nebraska Retirement Systems Committee. Name add, Senator Vargas, name added to LB 253, Senator Blood, LB 686, and Senator Day, LB 807. Finally, Mr. President, a priority motion. Senator Mosher would move to adjourn the body until Tuesday, March 26th at 9:00 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.